everybody knows that all the people don't have liberties, all the people don't have freedom, all the people don't have justice, and all the people don't have power, so that means none of us do. Take this country and change it. Turn it upside down and put the last first and the first last. Not only for black people, but for all people.
What's up, everybody? It's your friend Greg J. Hannibal the Radio. Listen, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Reverend Jeremiah Wright. I have heard the sound bites. I've actually heard entire sermons. I've watched Reverend Wright at the NAACP National Convention in Detroit. I watched Reverend Wright at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. And I've read comments all across the internet, newspapers, and all of that against Reverend Wright. I find myself asking, why is white America so shocked and appalled at this man? But then at the same time, the answer is very simple. And I came to this conclusion when I was listening to Frank Pastore, who is a popular Christian radio talk show host here in Los Angeles. He played contextual sermons in context of Reverend Wright, trying to give him a fair shake. So he played like 24 minutes, he played 10 minutes here, 15 minutes. And he said his conclusion that he drew from that context was that he was even more convinced that Reverend Wright was racist and filled with hate. The calls he took by and large were from whites all over the Southland, and most of them called in and said he was filled with hate. This is not Christ-like. And I was like, wow. I couldn't understand as a Christian how they could come to that conclusion, because there was nothing in those sermons that was untrue. And a lot of the rhetoric that comes through the sermons of Reverend Wright touch me as a black man in America. I'm not unpatriotic. Some people may think or assume that I'm a revolutionary or whatever. I'm just coming from a black perspective. I'm a black American. And our history in this country has been one that is wrought with struggle and strife. Well, when I was a young boy, learning from my father would tell us he came from straight up segregation in the South, where he would always say the only way to survive in this world is say yes sir, no sir, and not too much no sir. That's how you survived in his mind, to keep yourself from getting killed by white people. We grew up in California, but we would drive every summer down to Texas to see our relatives down there. And he grew up in a very small town that was markedly segregated. The railroad tracks was the dividing line of the town. The black side of town had unpaved roads and ramshackle housing. The white side of town had paved roads, nice houses, manicured lawns, and that. And he would always take me every year to the edge of the railroad tracks and look over and say, someday, son, you'll be able to walk on those streets. You'll be able to build a home just like that. You'll be able to build a community just like that. So get your education, son, so that you can overcome. This is what my father taught me. My mother would always say the more things change, the more they stay the same. And she would pump education as our weapon in the struggle for civil rights. Now, when I listen to Reverend Wright, a pastor, I hear him pointing out injustices that are real to us. When I heard Frank Pastore's show the other day, I came to the conclusion that white people will never understand our perspective. They want us to forget the past, and maybe sometimes we do cling too much to the past. However, we must never forget how we came to where we are today as a people. We must never forget. And if we are fiercely proud Americans, which we are, black people by and large, we're proud, but our history in America is real. It is through slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, lynchings, biases, the whole thing. That's how we've gotten here to 2008. That is our more than 200-year history, more than 400-year history here in America. While we study in school George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and all of that, the perspective from the black point of view, we were here from the beginning because you brought us here in 1609 to Jamestown, so we've been here. Our perspective is different. The perspective, like Jeremiah Wright said it best actually, the perspective of those that were on the above decks of the ship is markedly different than those who are in the belly of the ship. And that's just what it is. It's a conversation that needs to happen. But I don't see any resolution anytime soon. It's not hate. It's not prejudice, racism. How can Jeremiah be racist when racist is about being a system that is about white supremacy? That's what this country's been about. It's been about that forever. Yes, we're breaking down the walls. We've been making great strides. We got astronauts, Condoleezza Rice, the Secretary of State, on and on and on and on. Presidents of universities, presidents of major corporations. We have struggled, but those triumphs are on the backs of those who struggled. Some who died, some who were lynched, some who were beaten, some who were arrested just for the simple right to walk in the same door as everyone else. So don't get so angry if our perspective is skewed. Don't get so angry if our theologies strike you differently. And yes, you know what I heard a lady say, saw it on, I guess, iReport or YouTube or something like that, where she was basically saying that Reverend Wright's views were not Christian. Well, you know what? When I go to my church and they introduce a white speaker, I have come to learn as a student of Christianity that the perspective of Jesus Christ, who he is, what he is a little different than my perspective. And I don't know why that is, and that's not for us to discuss here on this particular blog, but it is because my experience, my life experience is different than my white brother or sister. And so the end game is that we have to overcome that and love one another. All people come together. Kathleen Cleaver says it best. Everybody knows that we don't have justice. We don't have equality. We don't have freedom. So that means nobody does. We have to take this country and change it. Turn it upside down. Put the last first and the first last. Not just for black people, but for all people. God bless you, YouTube. Have a great day.